and how to use Zoom most effectively. And we have a couple of teachers here, Sara Kalbhenn and Shawn, who both use some of the more advanced features in Zoom, and they'll be talking about the breakout rooms specifically. So we will start by just having them introduce themselves. So Sara, if you could introduce yourself first, you know, who you are, what you teach, those sorts of things, how long you've been on Outschool. Uh-oh, do you not hear her?
Ah! Oh, can you hear me? Oh, sorry, mute it. Hi. So I'm Sara, and I mostly teach sign language courses, but I do teach other things as well, a lot of math classes and a few other things kind of in there as well. And I've been on Outschool for, I think, about 1.5 years now. So.
Yeah. Excellent. And Shawn, could I have you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Shawn. I teach coding classes for ages 7 to 14. I've been on Outschool for, it's going to be 1 year this summer. It's been great so far. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Very good. So, like I said, today we're going to talk a little bit about Zoom. We get a lot of questions about Zoom in the webinars, but also in support. And so what we're going to do is start with a video that just explains some of the different features of Zoom, kind of the more basic features, and then after we have shown that, we will turn it over for some questions for our veteran teachers. As you have, or as you are part of this and you watch either the recording or are listening to our teachers, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or the chat, and we will get back to you and answer those questions as soon as we can. It's probably best to do it in the Q&A so we can kind of just focus on one area here. So I am going to share the screen with you to show you the first video. And we did it this way because this allows you to see the teacher view when you are presenting.
Since we are doing this webinar on Zoom and some of its features, we're going to do a quick video just to kind of walk you through some of the more basic features in case you aren't familiar with all of them or need a little bit of help in acquainting yourself with Zoom. So what you are seeing on your screen is exactly what you would see when you are the teacher. So it's just a mirror image of what you would see rather than what the students would see. The two buttons on the bottom here are your microphone and video. You can turn them on and off there. If you have any issues, you can use these up arrows to switch between a few of them. Most of the time, you don't have to do anything with those, and they just automatically turn on when you load Zoom. The other features here on the bottom is where you will spend most of your time and use most of these features on Zoom. And so the Manage Participants button, if you click that, it's going to open a window on the side. I am logged in on another device so that you can see what it's like to have somebody else in there and some of the features that go along with that. So if you hover over your own name, you can change your name and mute yourself, turn off your camera. If you hover over a student's name, it gives you a few more options, including renaming them, putting them on hold, or removing them. These same exact features you can find by hovering over their video and then clicking on the 3 dots. And there are a number of features there as well. If you pin their video, that will keep the camera on them. So if you have a kid presenting or something like that, you might want to pin their video. The other thing on the bottom here is you can mute all or unmute all of your students at one time with these 2 buttons. And then there is a more option there as well, which gives you some refinements about how to mute kids when they come into the classroom, or playing chimes when they come in or out, or you can now make it so that kids cannot change their names. So if you click this and put a check by it, you will allow them to change their names. If the check is not by it, they can't. And by default, I believe that it is set to allow them to rename themselves. Another feature here, we're going to skip over share for just a little bit, is the chat box. And many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with that. So in the chat box, you can write a message, and the students can too. It's set by default to everyone. And so a fairly new feature introduced by Zoom for our type of platform includes being able to basically stop chat. You can make it so the participants can chat with yourself, with everyone, or no one under this More button. You will need to have the most recent version of Zoom downloaded to be able to do this. You will also need the students to have that newest version, and so we are encouraging our users to update that their app to that newest version. Breakout rooms is what some of our guests are going to be talking about a little bit today, so I'll leave that to them. And so sharing the screen is probably the thing that you will do the most and has the most features in it. So when you share the screen, you can share your desktop, or you can share your whiteboard. There's a whiteboard option in it. So I'm going to share the screen, and so this second window would pop up for you, and you get to choose what you are sharing, your desktop, whiteboard, etc. If you have another camera or other features, you can switch over to those as well. But basically, most teachers are going to use these two features. Down here, there are two boxes that you can click. If you want to share the sound, if you're showing a movie or have some sort of audio clip, you'll want to share the sound so that the students can hear what is coming from your computer. The optimize for full screen video clip, that just basically makes a sharper image for videos that you might play. You can click this. I choose not to, because then the videos of the students that you see alongside when you share disappears. So I'm going to share this. I just have a blank Google Doc open for you. And so again, you can see this tool up here, and you have many of the same features that you had with the regular Zoom screen that we started with. You can share new, which means you can switch to something like the whiteboard. You can pause it so it goes back to the view of just the participants. And then annotation is something that you will probably use quite a bit. If you click the annotation button, another toolbar will open, and it gives you many different options for how you can use those. So you might want a spotlight to highlight whatever it is that you're talking about. You can go to stamps to put different icons on there. You can draw different shapes and lines and things like that. You can change the color by format. If you choose text, you can type scene on the screen for the students, and then do and redo, much like you do with a Google Doc or other documents. And then if you want to erase just one thing, you can use the eraser and go over it, or you can clear all mine or the viewer's drawings. Next to that, you have remote control. And this feature is kind of cool if you have like an interactive website that the kids can make choices on, or, you know, if they have a game that you have found online and you want the kids to click through and do things with the game, you can give them remote control. So I could give it to my other self here. And then you would have to take it back from them as well. But it allows the kids to be pretty involved. This More button, More always has more features. So you can open the chat box and move that around. The breakout rooms that they'll be talking about, you can do from here. You can disable annotation for the students. So if you want them to annotate, generally speaking, have them come to the middle of the screen here, and a menu is going to drop down, and they can choose to annotate with that. If things get out of control, you can disable the annotation of your users. We also have a newer feature that allows us to show the names of the people who are annotating. So if you have one kid who's writing all over the board or your screen, you can identify more easily who this is. Hiding the video panel would get rid of me here in the corner. And here you can share the sound and optimize full screen video like you could when we first came in and shared the screen. So if you want to switch to a new share, let's say we'll go to the whiteboard, you can just do new share, or you could stop and go back to the full screen with all your participants and then share again, starting all over. Very much the same in terms of your tools. Here you have annotation tools just like they were when you had the share screen on a document, but here you have a blank whiteboard. Again, under the More features, you have basically the same options here. The last thing, if you are wondering about how you want to view your students, this is speaker view, and what you see here is gallery view. Gallery allows you to see everybody. Speaker view should go to the person who is speaking at the time. And so that's kind of a quick roundup of all of the features on Zoom, and we'll turn it over to our teachers for the rest. Hi everyone. Since we are doing...
Sorry. Didn't want to hear that again. All right. So like I said, that was kind of an overview of the basic, I'm struggling here, the basic features of Zoom, since we do have a number of questions on those. But now we would like to talk to our guests and have them share some of their insights, particularly on breakout rooms. But if you guys have any other tips or advice based on things that you saw, we're more than welcome to have you share that with us as well. Both of these teachers use breakout rooms quite successfully in their classrooms. So we're going to ask them a few questions, and as I said before, please feel free to ask us questions either in the chat or the Q&A. So let's start with Shawn. Can you tell me a little bit about when you use breakout rooms as a feature?
Yeah, sure. Breakout rooms I use almost every class. It's kind of the format that I teach in. So I'll do a whole group lesson. I usually have about 9 kids in a class is my max. And I'll do a whole group lesson with the whole group of 9 kids. And then they'll have an individual activity they have to do on their own. I actually send them checkoff sheets, activity sheets. So I'll send them to a breakout room. And then in the breakout room, they have to complete the activity sheet where they have to apply what they learned in the whole group lesson. The biggest thing about breakers with me is that I ran a company before I did this. And I dealt with a lot of parent issues and complaints and stuff like that. And I think if you want to be successful in Outschool, you got to get the parents. You want the parents to be happy. You want the kids to be happy. And really, the breakout rooms allow you to give kids individual attention. And when you do that, you reduce the unknown. Because if you're always in whole group with 9 kids, you're not going to know which kids are struggling or which kids are having trouble. And then with breakout rooms, they can call you for help. When they go to their breakout room, there's actually a button when they're in their breakout room that they can press call for help. And it sends the host a message. Then you could join their room and you could solve their problems they have. And when you solve those problems and you don't just leave kids struggling, you have a lot less parent complaints and a lot kids are happier. It gives me a chance to make sure every kid has success.
That's really great advice. Sometimes you would think of putting them in breakout rooms as not being able to give them as much attention, but being able to individualize it by putting them in breakout rooms is really a cool idea. Just to back up, I guess I should have explained a little bit. With breakout rooms, it is almost like putting kids in groups, but they're like in their own private spaces. So like Julie and myself might be in one group, and Shawn and Sara might be in a group, and then we can collaborate without hearing and interacting with all of the others. Sara, can you tell us a little bit about when you use these breakout rooms?
Sure. So I mostly use mine for like special projects or assignments. I don't use it in every class like Shawn does. I think that's really cool. But since mine's sign language based, we don't have as much projects, so we don't need to do it every time. But I usually do it if I have the kids break out in groups and practice translating something. So I give them something in English, then they have to kind of talk together and figure out how to translate it into ASL, proper ASL. So that's when I do it, or when we're doing it into games. So a lot of times we'll do like different kinds of plays where they have students kind of have to talk, or conversations. They have to create their own scenario that the other group can't hear, and then they come back and they sign it, and the other group has to figure out what they're signing. So that's mainly how I use breakout rooms.
Cool. I like that last idea of having the other ones figure out
Yeah.
what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So do you guys feel like you need a certain number of learners to really make the breakout rooms work? Do you have a minimum number that you prefer?
I mean, I do it regardless of number. I have, that's just the format of all my lessons, to let kids, when you're learning code, you have to help them kind of work out the bugs in their code, or they just need that individual help. So yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I don't know about Sara, but yeah, regardless of number, I use breakout rooms.
So
For me,
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
So even if you have like just 2 or 3, you would still use them?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
But I think Sara does groups, right? Sara, you do partners in breakout rooms. Yeah,
Right, and you do individual? Yeah, so it's different, yeah. I would do a minimum of 4, just so that they would at least be 2 teams of 2. But typically, most of my classes are larger, 10 to 15, and so that even works better for me, just to have, multiple, like break that big group into smaller groups. It's helpful.
So if you have classes that are in the teens, how many groups do you make?
Normally, well, it depends on how many, but normally I try to do groups of 2 to 3 students in a group.
Okay, excellent.
To keep
All
it
right.
personal and small.
Just to throw in a thought too, I don't do groups like Sara does, but I'm guessing Sara would tell you that she probably has to train the kids to work in partners in groups a lot. I worked at a cyber school before, and I did some group stuff in break rooms. And if kids aren't like trained what to do once they get there to that breakout room, it takes a lot of practice before they kind of get good at it,
Yeah, absolutely. And on that topic, I only do it for my more advanced students. So I have 5 levels that I teach for the sign language. I don't do it for level 1, and I'm iffy on level 2, depends on the students, but I only do it for my more advanced students. They've been with me for a lot of my students have been with me for a year and a half now. So they're really well, they're equipped, they know me, they know each other, and it works really well. I've never done it with my first level because, it wouldn't work as well. They don't quite get it yet. So yeah, based off of
I
that.
remember having kids going into rooms and talking about their weekends and not even like doing the
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah. Because there's no way to monitor them, so.
Well, that is a great segue to our next question. So how do you lay the ground rules and introduce kids to the breakout rooms? You know, Shawn, you mentioned that they can ask for help, so you know when to go in there. How do you train them on that, since like you don't see the same view?
Yeah, the first day for me is that's always part of my first class, is we actually train them how to use the breakout rooms. I show them a slide that's, you know, here's what it's going to look like when you're in the breakout room. Here's where the help button is whenever you need me. And it usually takes usually 2 classes before they get comfortable hitting the help button. I usually have to keep reminding them. But yeah, it takes a lot of practice with them. You know, I don't know what I was going to say. The first day, if kids have never been in an online class, when you send them to break rooms, you have to make sure you tell them the class isn't over, because sometimes they'll go to the breakout room and they'll be like, well, they think everybody's gone and they leave. So I really am in a habit of saying, you know, especially for kids that are new to virtual classrooms, you know, it's not over. I'm going to bring you back. You know, you got this. I tell them how many minutes they're going to have. I send them, there's a way to send messages to the breakout rooms. Like, you have 10 minutes. I'm going to bring you back to the main room. So yeah, there is a little bit of orientation, I think, you know, initially.
Yeah, I'm sure that's especially true when you have just one kid in that breakout room versus
right,
two.
Yeah.
With 2 there, at least.
Yeah,
like,
that's funny.
where'd everyone go? But they have each other.
Yeah, right.
Sarah, how about you?
Well, for me, like, how do I monitor them is kind of the main thing. For me, well, I just kind of pop in. So every few seconds, I never leave any group unattended for very long, because, I mean, I trust these kids because I've been with them for so long. If I had a bad apple, I wouldn't do that, you know, group. So that's one of the reasons I don't do with my first course students, is because you can't be there all the time and see exactly what's happening. And so the way I monitor is I use the help button. They could reach out if something's going wrong, but then I pop in, hey, how's it going, guys? Got any questions? You know, no, okay, we're good. We're hopping to the next one. And then I just keep going round and round until it's time to come back. And that's just my way of keeping an eye on the groups. But the students that I do it with, I know pretty well. And like I said, I wouldn't do it if I felt like I had a trouble student.
And so can you explain a little bit about how you go into the various rooms?
Yeah, so like off the top of my head, I don't see it on the bottom, but there's one that says once they're in groups, there's a way to go down to the breakout room and say enter, and you could choose which one, like enter group 1 or group 2 or group 3 at the bottom there. And I don't remember the exact like wording or the buttons to push. I just have a habit of just doot, doot. But it's down there somewhere where you push the breakout rooms. It says enter group 1 or group 2, and you could just go that way.
I have a slide if you want me to show that.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah.
Let me real quick bring that up. It looks like what Sarah's talking about. This, right, Sarah?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yep. So it says join if you want to go into the rooms with the kid. You can also from here. You see the message I was talking about. So I'll send them broadcast a message. If you click on that, you can send them a message like you have 10 minutes left, and then the activity's finished.
Nice. That's do you use that PowerPoint, Shawn, when you're teaching the kids about the breakout rooms? And how
I do, yeah. I actually let me go back. I'll show you a slide I show the kids real quick. This is a slide I show the kids almost every class to remind them, like, this is where you go. It's actually got a little disoriented because I brought it from somewhere else, but I show them the ask for help button. I show them what message they're going to get whenever they hit the ask for help button, because they have to hit another button to invite us to come help them. And then this is just the message that kids get when it pops up. It says, do you want to join the breakout room, when you initially set up the breakout rooms too.
Awesome. Those are very helpful to see. Sarah, especially since your kids work in groups in the breakout rooms, do you have specific like ground rules, or how do you teach them kind of how they're interacting? So
once they get used to it, it's just kind of, okay, this is what we're going to do, and they know. But the very first few times that we do it, I go over it, tell them the rules, nothing inappropriate, stay on topic. If you need help, push the help button. You could always send me a chat, or I could send you a chat. So I go over the basic rules. They know, I always say if you're finished early, you could join back to the main group and I'll be there, or you could just send help and I'll help you join back, that kind of thing. So I go over those rules. But like I said, I've had these students for a long time, so it's not like a brand new student. And another reason I wouldn't do it with brand new students for first course is there's a lot of kids that are like anxious or really shy, and it's a little overwhelming to be in a group, and just like, oh, what do I do? So it is. I wouldn't necessarily do it. I'm sure sorting courses would be better, but for my course, how I provide it, it wouldn't be ideal to do it firsthand right off.
Yeah,
that's true for adults too. I'm thinking of classes I've been in, and they set up breakout rooms. You're like, I don't know any of these people, and I'm supposed to go do an activity with them.
Yeah, it could be awkward.
Yeah.
We do have a question from the audience, and I think I know the answer, but I'm not. I'm wondering if you guys know this for sure or not, and probably could explain that a little bit better. The question is, how does the recording work with breakout rooms? So when you record, your class and you're going to share it, in case somebody missed, is it just the main room that is recorded, or does it follow you as you go into breakout rooms?
Yeah, I wish it did record the break rooms. I think that would be a nice feature. Maybe that Zoom will have someday in the future, or we could get. But yeah, as far as I know, Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it records the breakout rooms at all. But it would be nice to have that.
It would. Yeah, I agree. That's my experience too. That just records the main. Yep.
Okay. I kind of thought that was the case too, but I wasn't 100% sure there. So can you tell me about some of the challenges? I mean, again, this is a perfect segue, going from not being able to see the recordings of the classrooms. Are there any other challenges that you've had with breakout rooms?
I haven't had really any challenges. I guess my biggest fear at first, when I was first starting, was that I couldn't see them, all the time. And so you just never quite know, right? So that was my biggest fear. But I haven't had any issues, thankfully.
Yeah, I think the only issues I've had, I talked about as far as, kids that are new to online learning. They go to a breakout room and they think it's gonna, they think it's gonna be a magical thing, like it's gonna pop up and tell them what to do in like big letters. Here's what you do. So I spend a lot of time saying, okay, I asked the whole class, all right, you go to the break room, you're not allowed to say I didn't tell you what to do. Repeat what you're supposed to do, because when they get on their own in that break room, all of a sudden they forget, and there's not. I wish we had too. Is when I worked with cyber school, there'd be like you could put up like a slide that popped in the breakout room. Here are your directions for what to do. So because of the way Zoom's set up, we have to be very kind of repeat directions a bunch before we send them to breakout rooms, just so they know what they're supposed to do once they get there.
That's good.
And Shawn, do the kids usually, do you give them a handout beforehand, or they just know they're supposed to do certain steps?
Yeah, with all my classes, they get a whole activity packet about a week before class starts.
Okay.
And they're supposed to print it out or have it on the screen. But there's still that first couple of days I have to help the kids find it and where it's at and stuff like that. But once they know where it's at, it runs a lot more smoothly.
Okay. Is there anything you wish you would have known about breakout rooms before you used them? Sara, I'll start with you.
I think I wish I had been a little bit more prepared with what to do if there is, a situation, because that used to be like heavily on my mind. Now I've kind of gotten used to it, and it's not so much. But at first, when I put them in a breakout, it's like, oh my goodness, now what happens if something happens? I have no, so that would be one thing for sure. It's kind of have a plan established and make sure that you have a way to be able to check in, whether you grow, join each group or come up with your own way. But that would be a big thing, is just have a plan.
Okay. How about you, Shawn?
I think it's similar, to definitely have a plan, just because, if once you send them there, it is kind of like, if the first time you do it, you're like, well, this is like, doesn't seem right. Like, I'm a teacher, I'm in a class, and they're all off by themselves. I'm supposed to be talking to them right now. And if you have a plan to like work through the room, so the first day I do it, I always go, whether they call for help, I think Sara said she does this, I just work through every room and say, do you have any questions? Do you know how to ask for help? Definitely have a plan to use them. You just don't want to send them off and they'll end up, signing off,
It sounds like you've had that happen.
Yeah, for a while. Yeah, I have. Yeah, and after it happened, every time now, I'm like, I say, we're not done. We're not finished. It's, we're coming back. Yeah.
I remember when I first used breakout rooms. I'm like a dinosaur on Outschool. I've been here quite a while compared to most teachers, and we weren't trained on Zoom. And then they introduced the breakout rooms. I'm like, oh, cool, I'm gonna try this. And I had no idea what was going on. I told the kids, I'm like, we're just gonna try it. But it is a little unnerving, yes. All right. Do you have any other advice for our teachers about using breakout rooms or Zoom in general? Is there any features that maybe you saw in the video that you thought were ones that maybe we could talk about a little bit more or anything like that?
I felt like your video did a good job covering it, honestly. I can't think of anything to add to it.
Yeah, I learned some new things from your video too. Yeah, I think it was great. Yeah. As far as some of the new features, the annotation, being able to see students' names, that's a new thing important for everybody to know, just because kids are great, but kids will push limits, and then you'll have kids, writing inappropriate things on the screen or, or just being silly, just scribbling. And
Right.
You can see their name now, so you want to know how to use that, to see their name and not, just give them a warning. Because usually once kids realize that you can identify them, usually they usually stop the behavior most of the time. So that's I thought that was a good feature. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
How about anything else with breakout rooms? Do you guys have any tips or anything that we may have missed?
I think just have a plan and have something for them to actually. My suggestion would be to have something physically, or digitally that they have to work through in the breakout room, some kind of visual. So while they're in there, they're checking off what they're supposed to be doing, because that really keeps them on task while you're trying to go through the break room to check on everybody.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, excellent. Yeah, that's very good advice. And if you can play around with them a little bit beforehand, they are a little bit different, because you can go in and out of them. And I always think it takes a little bit longer than I want it to leave one room and join another. So if you can find a way to play around with them, maybe join a few teachers in a Zoom room and play around or something like that. It might be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do we have any other questions from the audience? I'm not seeing any. No. So if you guys don't have questions, I just want to thank our panelists for being here. We really appreciate the help from our teachers when we do these to give us kind of a better insight into how these things work and their own personal experiences. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And then in addition to that, I just want to remind those of you who are out there that we are going to do another webinar tomorrow, actually. And I believe, Julie, it's at 3 Pacific. Okay. All right. And so we will be talking to our CEO, Amir, and he'll talk about Outschool and how it got started and some of the other things. So if you ever wanted to ask the CEO a question, tomorrow's your chance. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.